She demanded, "Give me your phone password if you have nothing to hide." I replied, "Fine," and gave it to her. The color drained from her face when I smiled and said, "Okay, your turn." They say that a person who is cheating will often accuse their partner of the very thing they are guilty of. I used to think that was just a cliché. Now I know it's a fundamental law of human nature. My fiancée of 2 years, Jessica, didn't just accuse me of cheating. She built an entire legal case against me in her head, appointed herself the prosecutor, and then demanded a search warrant for my entire digital life. Her mistake was not realizing that the verdict she was so sure she would win would ultimately be rendered against her. This isn't a story about a simple breakup. This is a story about a trap, a bluff, and the beautiful, quiet implosion of a guilty conscience. Our relationship hadn't always been a courtroom drama. For the first year and a half, things were good. Easy, we were a team. But about 6 months ago, a subtle shift occurred. It started with her phone. It, which used to be left casually on the coffee table, suddenly had a new, unbreakable bond with her hand. It was always angled away from me, and the screen would dim the second I walked into a room. She started having more and more late nights with the girls. Yet when I'd ask who she was with, the names would change, the stories would be vague. There was a new password on her laptop, which she claimed was for work security. I'm not a jealous man by nature. I'm a software developer. I think in logic, in patterns. And the pattern I was seeing was one of increased security protocols around her digital life, coupled with inconsistent and evasive answers. It was a classic sign of a system that has been compromised. I tried to talk to her about it. I was calm, I was direct. I told her that I felt a growing distance between us and that her new secrecy was making me feel uneasy. This was a mistake. My calm, logical approach was met with a tidal wave of theatrical outrage. She called me controlling. She called me insecure. She cried and told me she couldn't believe I didn't trust her. It was such an over-the-top performance that it only confirmed my suspicions. She wasn't reacting to my concern. She was reacting to her own guilt. The situation came to a head last Tuesday night. We were sitting on the couch watching a movie, or at least I was. She was, as usual, glued to her phone, a faint, unreadable smile on her face as she texted. I finally had enough. I paused the movie. "Who are you always texting, Jess?" I asked, my voice quiet. She looked up, her eyes flashing with annoyance. "Oh my God, are we doing this again?" "It's just my friends. It seems like you're talking to your friends a lot more than you're talking to me lately," I said. And that's when she decided to go on the offensive. She stood up and threw her phone down on the couch. "You know what, Tom? I am sick of this. I am sick of your constant suspicion, your paranoia. I have done nothing wrong, and I am tired of being treated like a criminal." She pointed a trembling finger at me. "You want to know what I think? I think you're the one who's hiding something. People who are this suspicious are always the ones with the secrets." It was a classic misdirection, a desperate attempt to flip the script. I just stared at her, my face unreadable. "Fine," she said, her voice rising with a kind of righteous fury. "You want to prove I can trust you? You want to end this suspicion once and for all?" She picked up my phone from the coffee table and held it out to me like it was a piece of evidence. "Give me your phone password. Right now. If you have nothing to hide, you won't have a problem with it." The ultimatum hung in the air between us. It was a test. A trap. She was so utterly convinced of her own righteousness, so sure that I must be hiding something to justify her own behavior, that she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She had established a rule that she, in her guilt-ridden panic, had forgotten would also have to apply to her. I looked at her, at the challenge in her eyes, at the smug certainty on her face, and I felt a strange sense of calm. She had just handed me the keys to the entire kingdom. I didn't hesitate. I didn't argue. I didn't even blink. "Fine," I replied, my voice perfectly even. I took my phone from her hand. I unlocked it with my fingerprint and then went into the settings and removed my biometric data. I set a simple 6-digit passcode. Then I handed the phone back to her. The password is 123456, I said. She was momentarily stunned. She had been so prepared for a fight that my immediate compliance threw her off balance. But her suspicion quickly won out. She snatched the phone from my hand, a triumphant smirk on her face. She thought she had me. She sat down on the couch and began her search. And it was a search worthy of a federal investigation. This wasn't a quick glance. This was a deep, forensic audit of my entire digital existence. She started with my text messages. She scrolled back months, reading every single conversation. She read my chats with my friends, my brother, my mother. She spent a full 10 minutes reading a long, boring conversation I had with my dad about the best way to fix a leaky faucet. As she scrolled, I watched her face. The initial look of triumphant certainty slowly began to morph into one of confusion, and then into frustration. She wasn't finding what she was looking for. There were no deleted threads, no flirty messages, no secret names. There was nothing. Because I had nothing to hide. After about 20 minutes on my texts, she moved on to my call log. She scrutinized every number. Then she went to my social media apps. She read every direct message, every comment. She went through my photo gallery, swiping through thousands of pictures of my dog, my family, and our vacations together. The silence in the room grew heavier with each passing minute. The only sound was the frantic swiping of her thumb on the glass screen. The frustration on her face was turning into a quiet, simmering anger. She wasn't angry at me. She was angry that her theory, her entire justification for her own behavior, was turning out to be completely and utterly wrong. After nearly 45 minutes of intense, fruitless searching, she finally gave up. She tossed the phone onto the couch cushion next to her with a sigh of disgust. "There," she said, her voice clipped and annoyed. "Happy now?" I didn't answer her question. I just looked at her, held her gaze, and gave her a slow, knowing smile. I stood up, walked over to the couch, and picked up her phone, which she had left sitting on the armrest. I held it out to her. "Okay," I said, my voice still quiet, still calm. "Your turn." The color drained from her face. I have never seen a human being's expression change so quickly and so completely. The smug confidence, the righteous anger, all of it vanished in an instant, replaced by the wide-eyed, cornered animal panic of someone who has just realized their own trap has snapped shut on them. "What?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Your turn," I repeated, holding the phone out a little further. "You said it yourself. If you have nothing to hide, you won't have a problem with it. That was the rule you just established, wasn't it? It's a trust exercise. So what's the password, Jess?" She stared at the phone in my hand like it was a venomous snake. "That's different," she said, her voice trembling. "How?" I asked, my voice still gentle, still reasonable. "How is it different? I just spent 45 minutes letting you violate my privacy to prove my loyalty to you. I passed your test. Now it's your turn to pass the same test. It's only fair, right?" I was using her own logic, her own words, and turning them back on her like a mirror, and the reflection she was seeing was one of pure guilt. "This is ridiculous," she said, standing up and trying to laugh it off. "You're being childish." "No," I said, my voice hardening just a little. "I'm being consistent. You created this game, Jessica. You set the rules. Now you have to play. Give me the password." The tears started then. The final, desperate defense of the guilty. "I can't believe you don't trust me," she sobbed. "You lost the right to say that sentence about 45 minutes ago," I said. "The password, Jessica. Or you can just admit right now that you're hiding something." She was trapped. Her own logic had built the walls around her, and there was no escape. She knew that if she continued to refuse, it was a confession in itself. Defeated, she snatched the phone from my hand, her fingers shaking as she typed in her password. She then threw the phone onto the couch and crossed her arms, glaring at me with pure hatred. I picked up the phone. I didn't have to search for long. I didn't have to dig through months of messages. The evidence wasn't buried. It was right there on the surface. I opened her messaging app. There was a conversation right at the top with a guy named Michael Work. The last message from him had come through while she was searching my phone. It said, "Thinking of you, can't wait for this weekend." I opened the thread, and there it was. Her entire secret life, laid out in black and white. Months of messages, hundreds of them. They talked about their dates, they talked about their future, they talked about me. I read a message from her sent just last week that said, "He has no idea. He's so wrapped up in his own little world, it's almost too easy." Then I went to her photo gallery. She hadn't even bothered to hide them. There were pictures of them at dinner, pictures of them on a hiking trip she had told me was a girls' weekend. And then the final, brutal confirmation, a series of pictures of them together in a hotel room that were clearly taken just a few days ago. I didn't get angry. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood there in the quiet living room and read a few of her own messages out loud. "I miss your laugh. That's a nice one," I said, my voice calm and conversational. "Oh, and this one. I can't stop thinking about last night. You make me feel alive." "That's very poetic, Jess." She just stood there, her face white as a sheet, tears streaming down her cheeks. She was silent. There was nothing left to say. Her own words were convicting her. I put the phone down on the coffee table. I looked at her, this stranger who had been living in my house, sleeping in my bed. "I believe your things are already packed from when you were pretending you were going to leave me last month," I said. "I suggest you finish the job. I want you out of my house. Tonight." She opened her mouth to speak, to offer another lie, another excuse. But she couldn't. She knew it was useless. The game was over. She had demanded proof of my innocence, and in doing so had provided irrefutable proof of her own guilt. She had set a trap for me, and she was the only one who had ended up caught in it. The aftermath was as pathetic as you would expect. She made a few desperate, tearful calls, and eventually got one of her friends to come and pick her up, along with a few hastily packed suitcases. She tried to spin the story to our mutual friends, of course. She told them that I was a paranoid, controlling monster who had forced her to give me her phone and had violated her privacy. It didn't work. The story was too perfect, too symmetrical. I explained the situation to our friends in one simple, logical paragraph. She accused me of cheating and demanded my phone and password to prove my innocence. I gave them to her freely. She spent 45 minutes searching and found nothing. Then I asked for the same courtesy in return. She refused, then finally relented, and I found months of messages and photos proving she was having an affair. She set the test, and she was the only one who failed it. There is no defense against that kind of simple, inescapable logic. Her lies couldn't stand up against the clean, brutal truth of what had happened. Her friends, one by one, went silent on her. They had been witness to her increasing paranoia and accusations against me for months, and now they knew why. It was all projection. The last I heard, she and Michael from work were trying to make a real go of it. Apparently, it's not as much fun when you don't have the thrill of sneaking around. I've spent the last month reclaiming my space and my peace of mind. I changed the locks. I rearranged the furniture. I deleted every picture of her from my life. I don't feel anger anymore. I just feel a profound sense of relief. I feel like I've woken up from a long, stressful dream. She thought she was setting a trap to expose my supposed betrayal. But all she did was build a perfectly designed cage for herself. She demanded a full accounting of my honesty, and in the end, the only thing the ledger showed was the mountain of her own deceit. She wanted to play detective. The only mystery she solved was how quickly a person can dismantle their own life with a single stupid and beautifully ironic demand.